You heard about going no contact with your family or loved ones. Maybe you've noticed the social media discourse that claims that going no contact is deranged or wrong, or that it's ridiculous for anyone to sever ties with their parents or their family. With the rise of woke, there's been a trend of unstable, delusional leftists bragging on social media about throwing away their relationships with their conservative family members. We're going to see some examples of that tonight. But the public backlash against this form of derangement has covered up an important truth, and that is that severing contact with genuinely poisonous people is not only morally acceptable, it can be necessary to save your sanity and to save your life. We're going to talk about that, and then we're going to be joined in the middle of the show by show viewer and friend of the show, Sherry. She's going to tell us the story of how she freed herself from her genuinely psychopathic mother, and why cutting contact with the actually abusive is not crazy, it's not immoral, and it's not a sin. But speaking of crazy and immoral, we are going to close out the show tonight with a blessedly brief peek at the latter-day career of everyone's favorite cast member from The Walking Dead, Madonna. That's all tonight on the show that looks at politics, culture, and relationships from a psychological lens. It's July 12th, 2026. This is Disaffected, and I am Joshua Slocum. Tonight, I want to talk to you about the concept of going no contact. Going no contact is what it sounds like. It's when a person decides to permanently sever a connection to another person. No calls, no texts, no emails, no voicemail. No contact. Cutting contact is often the best prescription for people who are enmeshed in an abusive relationship with a narcissistic person. And I need to underline and repeat what I've said in another form. I am not talking about throwing people out of your life because you have normal and ordinary disagreements about politics, public policy, or other issues. I am not talking about that, nor am I advocating cutting people out of your life simply and only because they vote differently than you, or they have different priorities from you. But actually, I'm going to temper and qualify that too. Politics and voting today in our era are not what they were in the 1950s. They're not even what they were in the 80s and 90s. There truly is a serious, stark, and real-world morality divide between the left and the right today. I'm not going to categorically state that it's petty or bad or unjustified to cut people out of your life just because of politics. That's always how it's phrased. Just because of politics. Politics today is a proxy for morality, actual serious moral questions. And it tells you something about a person's orientation to the ideas of family, to obligations to children, to the justice system, and other very serious moral concerns. Just because the insane left is wrong to look at their conservative family members as villains, and they are wrong. They are actually objectively wrong. It's not subjective, it's objective. They're wrong. Just because they're wrong to do that doesn't mean that it's out of bounds to end relationships with leftist loved ones who support things like transing children, child abuse, or letting infinity illegal aliens into the country, confiscatory taxation, all these other things. I have put such people out of my life, and I believe it was justified. I'm talking tonight specifically about severing ties with truly abusive, truly narcissistic people. I'm not talking about refusing to speak to your mom because she was sometimes distant or compromised by depression during your childhood. You know, if your mom really did her best to be a good enough mother for you and she loved you even if she was imperfect, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about severing ties with a parent who's a pathological liar, who's physically violent, who steals from you, who terrified you regularly as a child, who continues to exploit you, who runs reputation smearing gossip campaigns behind your back, to a parent who cannot and never has related to you in an emotionally normal way. I have to make these distinctions because of this big backlash against the concept of going no contact that's happening right now. People are noticing that a lot of young people are throwing their parents overboard because not because their parents were abusive, probably, but because their parents simply aren't hard leftist liberals. These are the leftist young people who brag about lecturing their father at the Thanksgiving table about how he is directly killing illegal immigrant children by voting for Donald Trump. And there's a lot of that. Here's an example of the kind of going no contact that I am not endorsing and that I am not talking about. It's this kind of woman who's provoked the backlash.
Whatever was more important than my son.
To those of you on audio, the text is, to my MAGA family.
Whatever it was, I hope you get it. If it was cheaper gas prices, cheaper eggs, more guns, Greenland, now for some reason, I hope you get that. All of it. Or else it was all for nothing, right? That's not true. It's not even true. I hope you suffer, honestly. I do. And before you tell me how cruel that is, hoping doesn't do anything. I hope for lots of things that don't happen. You know what gets things done is voting. And you fucking betrayed them. All of them. So many people. And whatever it is you betrayed them for, I don't know. I hope it's worth it. I hope it's good to you. And it probably will be. It probably will be. Because that's what you wanted. And you knew. But I'll never forgive you for it. Ever.
Every diagnostic tick box there for cluster B. Every single one. Nose ring, especially at her age.
Vocal fry. Also, making her voice artificially small to sound a little bit harmless.
That's feminine evil. That is as aggressive and insanely, furiously angry as any man you see who throws his fists. This is the feminine version. That's what the backlash is lashing back against. Trouble is, the backlash makes it seem to people that cutting off a parent is therefore never justified. There are no circumstances under which that's justified. It's always unhinged because we can only keep our minds on this particular facet of it right now. So we see everything through that lens. And because she's crazy to do it and she's wrong, that everyone's crazy to do it and is wrong, right? No, that's not the case. But I see so many people say, conservatives, who say you should never, no circumstances, never sever ties with mom or dad because they're the only parents you get. You have a duty to them and to God to, quote, honor them, even if that means they continue to abuse you. The people who are correctly disturbed by the insane leftists who are doing this to their parents, and they are right to be disturbed about that, but they don't understand that more than one thing is true at the same time. But more than one thing is true at the same time, really. Every instance of going no contact isn't unjustified. Sometimes it's necessary to save your life. And I know maybe that sounds hyperbolic, but it isn't. I am being literal. Staying in an abusive relationship with a personality disordered parent or spouse can kill you. It almost killed me. A little bit more on that in a few minutes. And I'm talking to you about this tonight because of a viewer comment that I saw on last Wednesday's live stream. The viewer said, I don't know what to do. Having my mother in my life is killing me emotionally and it's making me feel like I'm insane and I don't know how to cope with this anymore. Should I go no contact? I recognize that desperation because it was mine. When I coach clients in my one-on-one sessions, they often ask me if they should cut contact with their abusive family member. Most of the time, I don't give a yes or no answer, at least not right away. This is a decision that every person has to make for himself. And if I tell people what to do, I'm not acting in their best interest. I'm not being helpful to them. The best help that I can give, or another consultant or an actual therapist, is to offer open, honest conversation that tries to be as accurate as possible to help someone see their life circumstances for what they actually are and what's really going on without any varnish. If you and I have an appointment, we're going to look at all of your options and circumstances, and we're going to describe the pros and cons of each possible choice you can make. I want my clients, and I want people listening to the show, to see clearly what's in front of them and then decide which set of trade-offs they can live with, because every choice does have pros and cons. But there are times when I will advise a client or a friend to cut contact, or at least to seriously consider it. I do this in rare but unfortunately real cases when it's clear to me that the personality disorder nutcase in their life is trying to kill them or has a very real potential of killing them. Thankfully, that is rare, but it's not non-existent. It happens. I will also urge people to consider cutting off that relationship when they've tried everything for years and decades to please their unpleasable mother, and they get nothing for that effort but more lies, more mistreatment, and maybe an addiction to drugs or alcohol to help them get through it. That's no way to live. If you're a longtime listener or viewer, you know that this show is about cluster B personality traits and disorders, pathological levels of narcissism, greed, exploitation of others, habitual lying, monetary or emotional theft. The stuff that we call child abuse or domestic abuse. Disaffected has a thesis that the disturbed narcissistic personality traits that drive domestic abuse and child abuse have now become socially normalized and they operate at scale in society. All of us in America in the West are living in a scaled up version of the morally inverted home that my insane mother created in my childhood. Abusive and exploitative people are treated as if they were the victims. People who are genuinely suffering under oppressive and exploitative circumstances, they're accused of being abusers themselves simply for objecting to the mistreatment. Their objection to the mistreatment is called an act of abuse. When I was a kid in that house ruled over by my borderline personality mother, general society at least nodded to the idea that that kind of behavior was evil, that it was insane. Today, that kind of shit that I grew up with is called feminism and living your best life. At the end of the show, we're going to use Madonna and the success of her latest record as a case example of how the sick, the greedy, the depraved, and the soulless have been transformed into examples of living the good life. And in the next part of the show, I'm going to talk with viewer Sherry, who grew up under a psychopathic mother. Sherry finally made that permanent break in order to save her own health. And I know that, sadly, some in the audience will recognize themselves in Sherry's story. And hearing how she made it out may help you make it out. If you're someone with a mother or father, a husband or wife, or a friend, someone who sounds like my mother or Sherry's mother, you are the person I'm talking to tonight. You are the suffering person who should give serious consideration to cutting that out of your life permanently. And again, longtime viewers have heard my personal story before, but I'm going to summarize it again for newer viewers. If you're interested in detail, I did a 2-part back-to-back episode about this 5 years ago in 2021 called Over the Borderline Parts 1 and 2. You can find it on any of our video platforms. Audio too. Breaking contact with my mother saved my life. I did it 10 years ago at the age of 41. And until that time, I had no idea what cluster B personality disorders were. What they are severe, unchanging deformations of character. People with personality disorders have thoroughly corrupted moral character. There's a reason they're sometimes called character disorders. They act in all the ways that would come to mind if I asked you to come up with the archetypal bad person. My mother has been emotionally unstable from my earliest memories. My father left before I was born. I never met him. Shortly after my toddlerhood, my mother married a man who turned out to be a child beater, a wife beater, and a pedophile who molested his own daughter, and an attempted murderer. Our mother knew exactly what her husband was doing in that house, to me particularly, and she let it happen, despite piteously crying for years later about how she did her level best to keep her children safe. No, she did not. In fact, she provoked some of this behavior from her husband. And when he was not hitting or terrorizing us children, my mother was. My very first memory, not just of my mother, but my very first memory, is my mother slapping me across the face and hissing at me that I was dirty. I was 3 years old. A couple of years ago, my aunt, she told me a story that confirmed that I had not misremembered that and that other people saw my mother's character long ago. This was Christmas 1978. I was playing in the billiards room with my cousins. No, the billiards room was not in my house. We were poor white trash. My cousins were the rich people. The adults were drinking and smoking at the dining room table before dinner, and I must have yelled or acted up or something. My aunt told me that this is what my mother said, and what I'm going to give you is a quote. It's not embroidered. It's a quote. And it's important to note that this was the very first time that my mother had ever met her sister-in-law. This was the first time that my aunt and uncle and my cousins had met our family, because we'd married into it by marrying my aunt's brother. Very first time, Christmas. My mother yelled, "Joshua Lawrence Slocum, if you don't play nice, I'm going to rip your fucking arms out by the sockets and beat you with the bloody stumps." I was 4 years old. In childhood, my mother would haul me out of bed in a rage at midnight, dragging me back downstairs to rewash the dishes or to re-clean the floors because I'd done a bad job or left water spots. If you've seen the movie Mommy Dearest, that scene with the wire hangers and the scouring powder is a pretty good approximation of the kinds of thing that went on in my house. By the time I was 13, I had tried to kill myself twice. After I backhanded my mother across the face and told her she had better never lay a hand on me again, I was made a ward of the state and put into a juvenile delinquent institution for boys. A few years later, when she got to teen years, my sister met the same fate. Fast forward a couple of decades. I spent 20 years as a blackout drunk, and at the age of 36, I had a heart attack. Still, I didn't put the bottle down. What I didn't know then was that my mother was just another kind of poison that I was continuing to choose to drink. No one was making me do that. I chose to do it. Then in 2016, I had a moment. I was holding a spoon over my coffee about 8 o'clock at night, standing in my mother's kitchen. And I stirred my coffee and I went to put the spoon down. And I sort of noticed myself doing this. It started automatically, but then I saw myself. I lowered the spoon to the counter really, really slowly and carefully. Because if I lowered it too quickly, it would make an audible click when it hit the counter. And if it made a sound, my mother would scream. So there I was, 41 years old, terrified to let a spoon make an audible noise, lest my mother turn some profane tirade at me. At that moment, she was on a profane tirade, but it was aimed at her husband, who she referred to as the fucking retard, the brain-damaged asshole who couldn't do one goddamn thing right. That moment changed my life. I was 41 years old, but I was also 7 years old, holding my breath and hunching my shoulders, hoping that I would be too small and quiet to be noticed. And I wasn't in her kitchen, really. She lived there, but I owned the house. I bought it specifically for her, to rent to her for almost nothing, so that she would have a place to retire in her impoverished old age. But within just 2 years of moving in, my mother's derangement had turned my days and nights into a choice between becoming a Valium addict or washing down enough tranquilizers with my nightly vodka to make sure that I didn't wake up in the morning. I eventually called my sister and I said, "What is wrong with our mother? What's happening to her? Why is she making up stories to me about things that never happened? Why is she lying to my face and accusing me of things that I never did and would never do? Is it Alzheimer's? Does she have dementia?" And my sister responded and she said, "Josh, she's not demented. She doesn't have Alzheimer's. Our mother is a narcissist. I think she has a personality disorder, and I think you need to learn what that is." Well, I did. I spent the next 2 or 3 days reading everything I could find on cluster B personality disorders, and something remarkable happened. I watched a lifetime of what I thought of as crazy and disconnected maniacal behaviors. I watched them slot themselves neatly into categories that made sense. It was like watching a sorting machine. I had found the key to understanding the kind of childhood that most people think isn't real and you only see in made-for-TV movies. My mother swings from elation to despair, to rage, to suicidality. Her constant lying. Her claims that everyone from her brother-in-law to her mother to the grocery store manager, everyone had it in for her. Everyone was conspiring against her. All the screaming that she did to her children when she hit us, when she punished us, when she scared us, she would scream at us, sometimes grabbing us and shaking us by the shoulders. And when she screamed at us, she would say, "Why are you doing this to me?" My mother is a severe case of borderline and narcissistic personality disorders. Not everyone with these character flaws is as physical or as loud as my mother is. Some of them are actually eerily calm. Some of them, maybe yours, will smile and speak sweetly while they tell lies. Their children can't seem to break away because everyone says what a swell guy their dad is, what a pillar of the community, and what a sweet but really funny lady your mom is. I know from experience that I know right now, there are some of you in the audience who are going, "How do you know that was my mother?" I know. If your tormentor is not physical or is quieter than mine was, that doesn't mean that you had an easier childhood than I do. Don't be tempted to do comparison. Growing up under a personality disordered parent is torture and it's child abuse, even if they never lay a hand on you. There's a song lyric that comes to mind. Yeah, it's a song from Madonna. Most of you won't have heard it. It wasn't a single that got released. It was on a record that she put out after her divorce from Sean Penn. And that quote is this: "The bruises, they will fade away. You hit so hard with the things you say. I will not stay to watch your hate as it grows." The words from my mother hurt more than any of her beatings. The lies, the scorn, the contempt, the false accusations, and worst of all, the incongruous profession of her love for me while she was shaking me and I was crying. That's what almost killed me. I don't remember the physical pain of the beating. I remember the beatings, many of them, but I don't remember the sensation of the pain. I remember the words. 10 years ago, I had enough. I evicted my mother in court from my property under threat of bodily removal by the county sheriff. I have not spoken to her or had any contact with her since then, and I will not. The next time we visit, she will be lying on her back full of formaldehyde, and I will have the last word. I tell you this because I know that some of you will recognize your life in my story. I tell you this because I want you to free yourself. I want you to truly live. And I know from hard experience that you can free yourself and you can choose to live. None of that was easy, what I did. And when you do it, it won't be easy for you either. But the past 10 years of my freedom have been the best part of my life. And I want that for you too. There's something else I want for you. It is some of the most delicious cured meat you will ever have from our sponsor, BiltongUSA.com. You are seeing biltong on your screen. And if you have never heard that word, biltong is a South African word. And it's a method of using vinegar and spice to cure very thinly sliced meat. Air drying and curing. This stuff is fantastic. I describe it to people as I call it the most gourmet beef jerky you've ever had, but that's actually underselling it because it isn't beef. It's not beef jerky. It's softer. It's more tender. It has more flavor to it, but it's in that category. So if you like beef jerky, you are absolutely going to love this stuff. And it is, it ain't a Slim Jim either, baby. It's not ground up. It's nice, fine slices of beef. And I get it shipped to me every month. And I love eating it for a snack instead of things like potato chips and Pringles because it's just protein and animal fat. It doesn't have carbohydrates. It doesn't have sugar. It's not going to give you an insulin crash. I want you to hop on over to BiltongUSA.com. Get your meat on, but don't just stop there. They've got a really nice sideline in imported European grocery treats, and I highly recommend any of the cookies that come from Great Britain. Excuse me, Brits, I know they're called biscuits, but if I say that, people are going to think about what you call scones, and then we'll have to go into a whole thing. Go to BiltongUSA.com and remember to use promo code JOSH for 10% off your order. Now, come back after the break for a conversation with friend of the show, Sherry, about how she broke free from her psychopathic mother. We're going to begin a conversation with Sherry tonight, but we're going to continue it in a longer format, in a more relaxed format, this coming Wednesday, July 15th at 3 p.m. Eastern on our weekly live stream.
You fucking betrayed them. All of them. So many people. I hope you suffer, honestly. I do. But I'll never forgive you for it. Ever.
We're talking tonight on the show about whether or not it's a good idea to go no contact with an abusive family member, friend, loved one. If you have a situation like that and you're asking yourself that question, I'd be happy to talk that over with you. I offer private 1-hour coaching and consulting sessions. It's not therapy. I'm not a degreed mental health therapist, and I'm not offering you credentialed mental health therapy. What I'm offering you is an educated ear with experience, somebody who has lived through child abuse, domestic abuse, and a lot of narcissistic relationships. And I can't solve your problems for you, but I can help you see your problems more clearly. I can at least give you an outsider's perspective on your situation if you're feeling like you're drowning in it yourself and you can't think your way out of it. And it doesn't actually have to be about that. If you want to talk about what's going on in the world, if you want to talk about how to get along at work, if you want to talk about how to deal with people in your field or profession who are a lot more politically woke than you are, I have a lot of clients who come to me for that too. So if that sounds good, my calendar's got space in July. Check out joshuaslocum.net and you can find my calendar, find a time. If you don't find a time and day that works for you, just click on the contact button, send me an email through the website, let me know when you're available, and if I can make time for you off my listed hours, I will happily do so. And as a reminder, I will do sliding scale. My rates are $125 an hour for first-time clients. They are $95 an hour for returning clients or for people who are monthly supporters of the show. Thank you very much. But for you, if that's not what you can meet, talk to me and I'll meet you where you are. Other people have done it for me and I'm happy to offer that to you. joshuaslocum.net. Welcome back. I want to introduce you to a friend of the show. a viewer and supporter, and a woman that I have spoken with several times, who has a backstory that has some parallels with mine, parallels with some of you, and in some ways is quite a bit worse. Sherry, welcome to Disaffected.
Thank you, Josh. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you here too, because you and I have had some good conversations about narcissistic, borderline, psychopathic parents and what it's like to be a fully grown adult who's cut contact finally, and watching the conversation that happens around us. You know, I talked in the beginning part of the show before you came on about the idea that going no contact, there's a backlash against it right now because we're seeing a lot of these, frankly, insane leftist young adult kids cutting off their parents because they voted for Donald Trump or they won't commit to the leftist party platform. And it's been a frustration to me because, as you know personally, you're going to tell the audience, going no contact is sometimes absolutely necessary to save your sanity and save your life. Now, I'm going to ask you to give us a little bit of a summary of your childhood. Your mother was one of your primary tormentors, and you have described her to me and online, I think, as a full-blown psychopath. So tell us a little bit about childhood.
Sure. I know psychopath is really harsh, but I think if I can give you a synopsis of my story, you might concur. I'm always willing to talk about that if I'm wrong. But my mother, when she was a junior in high school, she left home and married my father, and she was pregnant her whole senior year of high school with me. So it was a pretty traumatic exit from the house of my grandparents. She was very rebellious. She was sneaking out to see this guy, and this guy was bad news. My grandfather told her so, and he did not approve of the match. But my mom decided she wanted to do what she wanted to do, and that's what she did. And then her life has pretty much been hell ever since, although I do have reason to believe that she was very disordered before this incident. My father was very violent. He is a very violent man. And so when my mother had me, it was about 2 years into my childhood where my dad just left us, and he left us with nothing. Like, I have been told many times by many family members, I didn't even have shoes on my feet. So he literally left us with nothing. And so instead of my mom going back to her parents, she decided to run off to Oregon. So this story originates in Idaho. But so around age, maybe not quite 2, about that age, she just ran off to Oregon and decided she wanted to join a hippie commune. And we'll see that very soon. But I always felt like my mother never loved me. She was very cold. Even as a little child, I knew there was something wrong, but as a little child, I loved her. I adored her. My mother was a very physically beautiful person. And I think that is an aspect to her that helped her get away with almost literal murder. She was adored by people just for her beauty. And, but she's not a beautiful person. She's a vicious and ugly inside person with this beautiful exterior, which is, I think that's kind of dangerous. So here we are at 2 years old, living in Oregon, and we're in Newport, which is on the coast, and we're going from place to place. There were times when we slept outdoors, like we camped outdoors with a hippie commune. So that the first 5 years of my life were just insane. I was like this feral child. I just remember, well, first of all, she never fed me breakfast. I literally did not know what breakfast was until I was about 4 or 5 years old, when a great aunt of mine, she would care for me when my mom was like in jail or something. So, and her name's Barbara. And this aunt,
well, I'm sorry, but you just said when my mom was in jail or something, as mothers often are.
Yeah, well, I had no idea at the time that this was not normal. I did I
Right.
was a very precocious child, so I picked up on a lot of things. And one, I don't know if it's a gift or a curse. I have very early memories. I have memories back to age 2, and I've always been cursed with this very vivid memory of things that happen. And I know that they're real because I've had so many multiple outside family members confirm them for me. And these things that I remember have been confirmed, even up until 2 years ago, when a friend of mine sent a video clip of my mother and myself. When it's not about us, it's sort of about us, but it's anyway. You have a clip, you'll show it, but you're gonna. This clip tells a lot about this time period in my life, and if we want to see that, maybe I can just
Yeah,
continue after that.
why don't we give people a visual and an audio? It just so happens that you have a clip from a local news program in 1981 that
Oh,
shows.
excuse me, Josh. I
I'm sorry.
believe it's
Did you need to
1970.
correct me?
Yes, sorry, Josh. I believe it's 1976.
76. Pardon me. Thank you for the correction. But that is going to show people. You show up in this clip, and your mother does too. Um, let's show people the world that your mother brought you into at that young age.
This is Nye Beach, a charming part of Newport's oceanfront. Its older houses make it a desirable place to live, and a landlord's paradise. Many of Nye Beach's older houses and cottages are rental units, but even in the off-season, no vacancy signs are common. The Sandmore Development Company owns 27 cottages in Nye Beach, including these dilapidated 1- and 2-bedroom units. The company recently raised rents 50 to 300%, and now asks $120 a month for a small cottage. These tenants found the increases unreasonable unless the landlord improved the cottages.
Well, basically we're asking for things like fix the roof, which leaks. A lot of the roofs leak. A lot of the plumbing is bad. The toilets don't work. They have to be arranged with bottles and strings and things like that. Those are the basic things.
15 of Sandmore's tenants formed the Nye Beach Tenants Union in February. The landlord signed an agreement to make repairs within 30 days. Just before the deadline, he issued eviction notices to members of the union.
Our position is that we always wanted to make the repairs, but our maintenance people tell us that it's impossible to make the repairs efficiently unless we can vacate the units, to turn off the utilities that are necessary to live there to make the repairs.
Every time someone has moved out, he's moved someone else in right away. So I don't think he's really intending to make any repairs.
So that was the hippie commune, eh?
Those were some of the hippies. There were a lot, and there were times that we slept outdoors.
And this was where your mother chose to bring you instead of going back to her parents who had a healthy and safe house. Is that right?
That is correct. So this
Interesting.
clip, there's just so much about this clip that it's multi-layered for, I think it's 1 minute and 39 seconds. That little tricycle there was my tricycle. So I lived right inside that unit. And yes, that was the case. But the thing I wanted to point out, and it's a very short section, is when you see the little baby in the clip, that's myself. And 2 people over is my mother, the blonde one.
I think she's coming up on the screen now. The blonde one on the right
there.
wearing the auburn jacket.
Correct.
Okay.
So what I find interesting about this, since I've become a mother myself, is first of all, I would never put a child in this situation. But secondly, why is this baby sitting 2 people away from her? I would never, my child would be with me on my lap if I was in this situation. She did not like me. Anytime I wanted her affection so badly. Anytime I tried to climb up on her lap or do something like that, she would shove me off. And not at this stage, but a little bit later in life, the constant thing that she would tell me is how ugly I am. I can't stand the sight of you. Get out of my face. This is something I heard almost on a daily basis. She never said, I love you. I never got hugs. When I cried, I would get punished. She did not like crying.
Was she allowed to cry, or did she not cry herself either?
I've seen her cry. Are you asking if this happened when she was a child? Or if
No, I guess I'm sort of making a sideways comment. Let me just be direct about it. I don't know if it was the case with your mother, but I've seen it in many parents. My mother was one of them, where she'd get very, very annoyed, irritated, or rageful sometimes at the expression of when her children, when I or my brother or my sister would be afraid of her, would be sad, would be, well, a lot of times afraid of her, and we'd cry or cower or object, and our objection or our show of emotion in tears infuriated and enraged her. But she was allowed to have those emotions herself. She was allowed to break down and cry. She was allowed to scream. She was allowed to call us obscene names, but we were not allowed to flinch, right?
Yes. Thank you for clarifying. So I think I understand that. And I think with my mother, she actually enjoyed seeing the fear and the humiliation. So instead of getting angry about it, she'd get this smile on her face.
Oh yeah, yeah. I know that. It's a smile. It's a smirk.
Like a smirk. Yeah.
It's a smirk. And for the audience, if you've heard the term duper's delight, it's similar to that. It's often an expression of that. It's the smile, the smirk of satisfaction that a dark personality gets on their face when they see that they've effectively hurt you. They've made you scared, or they've been able to hurt you. They take satisfaction. I saw my mother do it to me too. Did your father show up in this clip? Is he in there?
No, he is not. He was gone by
No,
this time.
he had
So
already
from my
gone at that.
estimations, I think I'm about 2-ish, maybe 2 and a couple months old in this video.
Okay.
Yep.
Now,
So my father was already long gone, and my mother had just gone out and started partying.
okay.
So what I want to point out is, I know that this clip makes this landlord look bad, and yes, he is legitimately a slime ball. However,
Yeah.
I want to point out from my knowledge of these people that were in this room is they were partiers. That's what my mom did in these places. They would be drinking drugs. I was exposed to a wide variety of drugs when I was very, very young.
Yeah, and we've talked about this, you and I, privately at least once before, but what occurred to me every time I watch this is, and yes, of course, the landlord is responsible. It's obviously a slum. It's obviously a shithole. But leave that aside. We've already accounted for that. I see grown men and women there who could not be bothered themselves to simply to repair the. I've got a running toilet right now, and the only reason it's still running is because I haven't gone out and gotten a little handle and flapper kit. It's very easy to do these yourselves. None of these adults could have been bothered to get up and do anything but stick a couple of empty beer bottles in there. I mean, I'm not saying that the landlord should get away with this, but they very clearly had zero motivation to do what they could have done themselves to improve the cleanliness and sanitation of that place. They just sat there and did nothing.
That's right. And I'm glad you noticed this, because both sides are wrong. And I remember the character of these people. And another thing I wanted to point out about this clip, it's just a wealth of information. They were doing activism. So very early on, my mom was starting to do activism. And I'm serious, like this is mid 70s. So
this is 70s, yep. Yeah, it's amazing how many of these people like your mother, people like my mother, become activists, as you say. My mother for a while was an anti-nuclear activist.
My mother was an activist to get as much. She was a pro-welfare activist. She was on the dole. I have lots of welfare stories about. I'll do a quick one because this is another snapshot into her character. So we were on food stamps, and I know probably most of your younger listeners don't know what food stamps are. Maybe I'll let you explain those. But she would give me like a $5 food stamp to run into a store by myself. I'm 4 or 5 years old at this point, and I would go into the store with this $5 food stamp to buy her a pack of gum. And back then, if you bought anything with a food stamp, they gave you back cash change. So she would
Yep.
take that cash and she would buy marijuana and things with it.
Yeah, this is, we called them food stamps because they were like, I was going to, nah, I was going to say, because they were like green stamps, but nobody will know what that is either. They were actual paper coupons. They came in a book, a tear-off book. It looked like Monopoly money. And they'd come in denominations, I think, of $1, $5. Maybe they were, there was more than that. But you actually got paper tickets, paper fake money that you could buy food with. And my mother would do that too. Almost everybody who got food stamps would do that. They'd buy a small item, hand over the $5 piece of paper, and get the $4 and change back. And that's how you converted that into cash. You can't do that anymore. Folks, if you have never heard food stamps before, it's what you know as EBT. I got my EBT, except it's all in a card now. Sherry, I want to ask you, because we're going to talk at much greater length next week on our live stream, which is happening Wednesday, July 15th at 3 p.m. Eastern. We've got a lot more time, and we're going to be able to get into your story more. But to give people an idea beforehand, do you have one or two anecdotes or stories you can tell that best illustrate the level of anger or mistreatment that your mother was able to get to with you?
It seems like the first 5 years, I do my story's in blocks. So the first 5 years, it was just me and my mom. Oh, here's a story for you. My sister, so when my mom would have been about 22 years old when she got pregnant with my sister Misty. Oh, I said Misty, but my sister gave me permission to talk about our story. I love you, sis.
Sure.
So anyway, my mother was hanging out with high schoolers. At the age of 5, I was no longer on Newport Beach. We had moved inland to a little town called Toledo, and we lived in a trailer. The rest of my growing up was pretty much trailers. So we're living in a trailer, like way out in the middle of nowhere. And at that time, my mom was partying with high schoolers. Like all of her friends were juniors and seniors in high school, while she was a 22-year-old with a single mom with a child. And they were doing lots of drugs and partying together. And my mom ended up getting pregnant with my sister at this time. And I think it's after my mother got pregnant and had my sister, she became much more angry. Because, of course, the young man did not stay with my mother. And I think she took that really hard. And life got much worse for me and going forward. So here I will say that by the time my sister was 2 and I was 7, there's 5 years between us, I was parentized already. My mother made my little 2-year-old sister my responsibility at the age of 7. And if my 2-year-old sister act up, I got punished for it.
How would you get punished?
Backhanded slaps are one of my mom's favorites. Screaming. I remember getting spanked, but I didn't get spanked a lot at this time. The extreme violence happened a few years later. So I would say the violence really progressed.
I'm just going to take a wild guess. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my guess is she probably got more florid and violent with you as you approached adolescence and began to develop your own personal identity.
That is 100% correct.
It's usually how it goes. We're gonna when we talk on the live stream, one of the major themes we're going to hit is going no contact. And actually, before I do that, let me ask you this: Did you have First of all, how old were you? At what point in life did you finally cease contact with your mother?
Let's see. I would say that the final straw was 2019.
Okay, so actually
It was
not
actually,
that long ago.
well, I apologize, Josh. That was the final straw. I had tried for about 15 years before that. It was kind of off and on, and we can talk about
That's what I
that
was going to
later.
ask you about.
Yes,
Did
correct.
you have multiple attempts? I mean, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I know a lot of people have said, "Okay, that's it. I'm not dealing with this anymore." They cut off the abusive parent for 2 years, and then they get reeled back in, or they second guess themselves and say, "I was too harsh. I should never have thrown my dad out of my life." What was it like for you? Did you have those multiple attempts?
I did. I really did, and it was exactly like that. And I will say,
You're at
that
21
my
minutes.
mother tried to sabotage my marriage. So, of course, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, and that was pretty early on in our marriage. She was always trying to interfere and whatnot. Fortunately, I've married a very good man, and he's very stable, and he didn't fall for her stuff. But also at the same time, my husband was her favorite. You know how borderlines have a favorite, and you're either the best or you're the worst. My husband was always
Yep.
the best up until we'll get to the story of the final severing of contact. But I would say I didn't really understand. Well, I wanted to tell a linear story, but I think it'll be okay if we jump around a little bit. I ended up going to college quite young on my own. I was a very precocious child and I did really well in school, even though I moved 12 times from K through, actually from first grade to 12th grade. I had a very chaotic life, but somehow, miracle, I got to college and met my husband there. And my mom, oh, yeah, I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. When I left my mother at age 16. I left and went to live with my grandparents. And I got into college. And when I called her up to tell her that I got accepted to college, I thought she would be proud. She didn't talk to me for 6 months. She was so angry that I was not going to come back to live with her that she cut me off and didn't talk to me for 6 months. And so she's the first person to cut off relationships. So I didn't know.
Yeah.
It was a long process to figure out, and I know that this is kind of the same for you. It took a long time for me to understand what was going on with her and just how disordered she was, and how
Yeah.
I grew up completely in an insane manner, and I have trouble relating with other people.
You can let her go out to the end of this story.
Have stable family. So when I met my husband and met his family, he has a very loving family, and they were stable and they didn't scream at each other. They never raised their voices to each other. And I'm like, is this real? I could not believe this is real, because my mother has one volume and it's just screaming all the time. They're screeching.
Yes. Yes, I know it. I know it very well. I'm laughing in sympathy with you, certainly not at you. Um, this is a great place. I'm a believer in cliffhangers, and we're gonna leave this as a cliffhanger because I want people to tune in for our longer conversation this coming Wednesday, July 15th, on the live stream. But I also want to let people know as we go out here. The message that you have and what we're going to talk about is applicable to anybody with abusive family members, but you are a committed Christian. And one of the things that I know you want to talk about is talking to other Christians as well, who will not cut contact with an abusive or even, frankly, very dangerous parent, because they believe that that would be a sin, that that would be failing to honor their father and mother. And I know that you have a very different read on that, and you believe that Christianity does not compel you to stay in active relation with an abusive mother and father. Have I characterized your position accurately?
Perfectly stated.
Okay, good. I'm really looking forward to our talk, because I want everyone to hear it. And if I could, audience, if you're not religious, if you're not Christian, please listen anyway. These are universal human truths that we're talking about here, and they're applicable to anybody. But if you are a Christian and you have struggled with this conversation coming up next Wednesday is going to be for you. So, Sherry, I want to say thank you for starting the conversation with me. I'm really looking forward to talking to you at length this coming Wednesday.
Thank you, Josh. I look forward to it as well.
Okay, take care. All right, folks, we are going to take another break, and when we come back, I'm going to talk about that woman again. Which woman? Madonna. See you on the other side.
Tenants found the increases unreasonable unless the landlord improved the cottages.
Well, basically we're asking for things like fix the roof, which leaks. A lot of the roofs leak. A lot of the plumbing is bad. The toilets don't work.
Every day, another smart but small podcast starves to death because no one cares. Would you like to help one small podcast keep growing? Sure, we all do, and you can, starting at just $5 a month with a paid subscription to support Disaffected at subscribestar.com/disaffected, or you can become a supporting member through Substack at disaffectedpod.substack.com. We would love to have your support because that is actually how we make the show and make it come to you every week. And if you sign up as a monthly supporting member, you get an invitation to our private members-only chat server in Discord, where we have topics from religion, hot-button political issues, general chit-chat, and lots of good people in there. I like to say that it is social media with 95% less nastiness. So we would love to see you there. If you don't want to sign up for yet another monthly debit, I understand that too. One-off donations and contributions are gratefully accepted. A couple ways for you to do it. We've got a new one. I'm going to give you the new one first. Kevin doesn't have a graphic for this, but we'll get it for next time. That's my fault, by the way. You know that whole buy me a coffee? Well, you can buy us a coffee. That is ko-fi.com/disaffected. ko-fi.com/disaffected. Throw a little money in the cup. We'll thank you for it. You can also go to disaffected.com and click on support us. And if you want to kick it with me, school, send us checks or money orders, or even cash if you trust the U.S. Postal Service, to Disaffected Productions, 89 Main Street, Box 1027, Montpelier, Vermont, 05601. And if you choose that option, I am going to send you 4S sourdough starter, powdered sourdough starter. Why is it 4S? You'll see in the special little cards of thanks I have printed up for you. I'm not going to give you the secret. But if you want to bake bread like some of the stuff you've seen me make, I dried it up, I powdered it, I packaged it up. I will send you some sourdough starter with your check, money order, or cash that comes in the mail. All you have to do is put it in a jar with some flour and room temperature water. Wait a few hours. Boom, you'll have a bubbly yeast colony. Thanks for your support. Years ago, I would have been hovering on the edge of my seat, credit card or cash in hand, waiting for the moment that I could hand over my money to get my hands on Madonna's latest record. But it's July 2026, and I would consider buying her new album to be an immoral act that cooperates with the cultural rot that's taken Western civilization into the gutter for decades. Now, you see on your screen the promotional art for her new album. Yeah, really take that in. Pretty, huh? You know, it's quite a thing to go from being a stereotypical Gen X gay boy, Madonna freak, to a middle-aged conservative who thinks that the woman is actually the whore of Babylon. Thank God I finally grew up and got out of the gay lifestyle with its promiscuity, addiction, and die young and leave a good-looking corpse motto. The trouble is, the fans of raunchy, narcissistic, materialistic stars in the 2020s seem even more deranged and more numerous than they were in Madonna's heyday in the 80s and 90s. When she came onto the scene in the early 80s, Madonna's in-your-face sexual button-pushing was at the extreme edge of what culture considered acceptable. Today, there are no more boundaries for her or anyone to break. Not that it has stopped her from trying. The only thing that woman could do to push the shock envelope today would be to wear her internal sexual organs on the outside, and I wouldn't put it past her. The 67-year-old has been performing, we will say generously, on stages lately, dressed in what Baby Jane Hudson would have worn had her parents started her in burlesque instead of vaudeville. Take a look.
Juicy.
Yeah, I'm ready for you to close your legs. So gross. Along with her very obvious butt implants, Madonna has been squeezing herself into pink satin teddies cut so high in the crotch a gynecologist could examine her from across the stadium. She spreads her legs to reveal a giant boombox speaker while rolling around on her back, limp syncing to her own processed voice. Then she does things like bringing on a 6-foot drag queen a transgender woman onto the stage so that she can put her posterior into the dancer's face to suggest an act that is too lewd to describe. Don't trip, Grandma. Look, she has to do all the stupid dance moves that fucking Gen Z kids are doing. Help Grandma up. Did you forget the beat? You know, it didn't occur to me, but it did occur to Kevin. He left me a note in the script. She looks tired. I think she's actually arranging her choreography so that she can get helped up from off the floor. I really do think so. There's nothing wrong with being 67 years old, and she is probably in tip-top shape among the set of 67-year-olds. But 67 isn't 30. All of this shit is a rehash of the shockingly incompetent, boring, embarrassing concert tour that I attended of hers 2 years ago, 2024. She went on the road with the greatest hits tour at age 65, and my friends and I have been to half a dozen of her shows over the years, usually from the front row or the first couple of rows. And at her best, whether you like her or not, at her best, she is a mesmerizing live performer with a charisma that you can't buy and you can't sell. Not that night and not anymore. The arena in Denver, where we saw her show, was packed with aging, remember the Madonna wannabes from the 80s? Late middle-aged women with their hair tied up in rags and crucifix necklaces on. superannuated gay men prancing about in makeup and the kind of shorts that used to get you arrested for public indecency when we cared about those things. And out came Our Lady of the Pop Charts singing along to an entirely pre-recorded musical track. Not just her vocals, but the entire band. Because there was no band. There was no band. It was all CDs. And the sound was so poor that I couldn't understand half of what she was singing or saying, and that turned out to be a mercy when she decided to break into a speech praising the child abuse that we call transgendered children. Madonna is simply a modern Joan Crawford. She brought two of her adopted African children onto the stage that night to gyrate with her, while male dancers displayed portions of their anatomy that cannot usually be seen unless you have splayed your buttocks. Yeah, I mean what you think I mean. At 65, she was stuffing herself into corsets and teddies that don't wear the same at the AARP stage of life. It was unflattering and embarrassing, and during a costume change, my friend Clay looked at me and he said, the more she puts on, the better she looks. Yeah. So for the first time, I stood at a Madonna concert looking at my phone for the time because my back and feet were killing me. Well, with the release of her new dance album, I have taken a peek at the online diva wars between fans of Miss Ciccone and devotees of the later simulacrum known as Lady Gaga. I've been watching the younger fan reactions to senior citizen Madonna, and they are insane. Let's put this tweet up, Kevin. This was a reaction to somebody's when I talked about how insane and ridiculous she looks. What I'm giving you is just a representative sample. There were hundreds of these. No, she's incredible. Her New York City performance was iconic. So stop your bullying. Bullying. Here. This is my favorite part of the show. Little bit of levity here. Check out her bullshit. I just realized this is from 2023, but it doesn't matter. She always says the same thing. I'm going to give you a treat. I am going to give you my patented vocal impression of Madonna's speaking voice. As she would say, "Are you ready?" Here we go. Once again, I am caught in the glare of ageism and misogyny that permeates the world we live in. A world that refuses to celebrate women past the age of 45 and feels the need to punish her if she continues to be strong-willed, hardworking, and adventurous. I have never apologized for any of the creative choices I have made, nor the way I look or dress, and I'm not going to start. I have been degraded by the media since the beginning of my career, but I understand that this is all a test, and I am happy to do the trailblazing so that all of the women behind me can have an easier time in the years to come. In the words of Beyoncé, you won't break my soul. I look forward to many more years of subversive behavior, pushing boundaries, standing up to the patriarchy, and most of all, enjoying my life. Bow down, bitches. When I recently posted on social media that Madonna could have become an attractive but dignified older woman, I got countless hysterical reactions like this one. Unpronounceable social media name says, "I'll never understand the ageism and misogyny directed at her. She still fills stadiums and has fans the world over, so let her be. She's not harming anyone." You see the logic, right? It's all just ageism, and it means you hate women. If you don't like Madonna's act, that means you hate women. It's not possible. She can't be doing anything worth criticizing if she's filling stadiums. Don't you guys see that she has fans still? So you can't criticize her. Also, leave her alone. The young have a name for what we would call over-the-top fans, the obsessive types who make a singer or an actor or a sports team into a religion. They call them stans. I don't know why, but that's what they call them. Apparently, the word fan, shortened from fanatic, was not fanatic enough. They will defend their divas to the digital death. If you dare to say that you're not into their celebrity obsession, the stans will scream at you that you're old, fat, stupid, a bigot, repressed, or that you just hate people enjoying things. For them, it's not enough to praise Madonna. Sorry. It's not enough for them to praise Madonna for her music or her style or her back catalog. No, she has to be the biggest, best, baddest bitch ever. And she doesn't make any mistakes. For me, watching these antics is looking into an unpleasantly clear mirror of who I used to be. When I attended that concert 2 years ago, I thought to myself, what are you doing here? I was 49 years old, tired, and the magic was gone. But it was more than that. It was more than just getting older and reaching a different level of maturity. I wasn't just no longer interested in Madonna. I was and I am actively repulsed by her. She stands for everything that I think is rotten and destructive in modern society. Brazen promiscuity, breathtaking narcissism, out-of-control greed, and breaking every rule simply for the sake of breaking a rule. What did I see in her for decades when I was younger? How did I fall under that spell? And I know I'm talking about Madonna. You can translate this to any other obsession with a celebrity like this. It's not just about her. This is a culture-wide problem. Well, in the beginning, things were different. I remember 1983 in Anaheim, California. I was across the courtyard at Little Dinda's apartment, her mother's apartment, for Little Dinda's 8th birthday. And the wood grain console stereo was tuned to the top 40 station. And this enchanting melodic synthesizer run up and down the scale came out of there. It sounded like tinkling electric glass. And then a booming bass line. And some ethereal creature I'd never heard before singing, "You must be my lucky star, 'cause you make the darkness feel so far." It's profound when you're 8. I was captivated. You could not dance to it. I'd never heard anything like it. And less than a year later, I was sitting in front of MTV, and I watched this glamorous vixen in a pink dress be pushed up onto a literal pedestal as handsome men showered her with cash and diamonds. That was the beginning of my obsession with Madonna Ciccone. And it was an obsession. I bought every single record, 45 singles, 33 long playing, and 12-inch maxi singles. I bought every single poster, every single magazine, every single fan newsletter. I begged the bus driver to turn up the radio when her songs came on, and he did. For years, I spent money on her merchandise, on her concerts, and I defended her singing, her dancing, and her message to anyone who would listen. And most of those just wanted me to shut the hell up. To kids like me, she was a liberated, self-made modern girl who took on the system. No man was going to tell her what she couldn't do with her body. Stupid, stuffy old religious conservatives only hated her because, they're afraid of normal sexuality and afraid of bodies, okay? But what was it that attracted young girls and young gays to this siren? Young people are vulnerable to unhealthy obsessions with unhealthy celebrities because they're missing something at home, usually. I was missing a lot. My mother was, as you know, deranged. I was 10 years old before she finally put my violent stepfather out of the house after the night that he tried to murder her while we three children watched. My teen years were spent in a juvenile delinquent home, and that's history. Families like mine provided none of the normal, necessary nurturing that teaches children to value the good things in life, the actual good things, and to value the good. There's no religious instruction, there's no unconditional love, only mood swings, temper tantrums, inconsistency, lying, violent punishment. Like too many young people today, I, as a young person, became convinced that the idea of family was a sick joke. It was just something that the fundagelicals had cooked up and forced down our throats with what propaganda like shows called Leave It to Beaver. And when I called Madonna a siren a minute ago, I meant it literally in the mythological sense. She sang a song, and kids like me foundered on her rocks because no adults made sure to tie us to the mast. I think she's even more than a siren. I would call her a witch, a sorceress. She's cast a glamour over young people in the original sense of that term. And that term, a glamour, it's Scottish. It refers to a magical spell that binds and blinds. It makes you see something as more beautiful and desirable than it really is. That's what glamour means. The healthy is recast as sickness. Temperance, charity, chastity, and loyalty, well, those are for suckers. Greed is good. Like my unstable mother, Madonna created herself God in her own image and then demanded that everyone worship her. We can ask how a woman of 67 years can stand to do what she does without dying of embarrassment, but the answer is obvious. We are a society that pays for pathology. Madonna sells the lost exactly what they're looking to buy. Far from fading into the past, her brand of self-destructive self-worship has been completely culturally normalized in the 21st century. For years, I complied with my mother's idolatrous demands, and I gave in to Madonna's too. Now I'm free, and an even greater percentage of young people today, it seems to me, than those in my youth, are in moral and spiritual bondage. Tie your children to the mast of the ship. Give them what they need at home, or they will pay dearly for a poison substitute. That's the show. As always, thank you for lending us your eyes and ears for a whole hour this week. We'll see you next week.